Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is Kevin McDonald, and you're listening to Positive Talk on the Brushwood Media Network and YouTube and anyway, we're all over the place. But I'm really excited about today's show. It'll be great fun. I implore you to stay with us. We've also got some great information that we're going to impart to you this hour, and also some really unique ideas and ways of handling some of the trauma and some of the things that are going on every day, it seems like here. But first, I want to introduce he's actually become a really good friend. He's been on the show several times. He is been in the service for like ever. He's been in broadcasting for even almost as long. He does a lot of work with nonprofit organizations. He really has got a really good heart for doing. I don't know. Is he listening, Mary? Do you think? But he's got a really good heart. His name is John Verico, and John, welcome to the show. This is kind of like your debut.
So great! It's so great to be here, Kevin.
It's kind of like your debut of a whole new thing that we may be embarking upon. But I'm glad you're here because you brought us Mary. And Mary's got quite a lot of stuff that we need to talk about, especially this is the week of 9/11. And we've had a lot of problems of late with shootings and that kind of stuff. And in a roundabout way, she helps people with that. But I would love for you to introduce Mary, how you met her, how to pronounce her last name would be a big one, stuff like that.
Well, Kevin, first of all, thank you for inviting me to co-host this episode, and it's very special to me, not just because I get to work with you, but also because I actually get to bring on as the first guest in for me working with you, a very dear friend. As well as a colleague. And so I would love to introduce to all of our listeners, Mary Tyszkiewicz. Mary, Dr., by the way, Mary Tyszkiewicz. Mary is a brilliant researcher, and she's got probably one of the most unique projects that she's been working on. And I was just so excited about it. And I said, you know what? The world needs to know more about what you are doing and what you have found through your research. And so, Kevin, you brought out the fact, yes, this is the anniversary of 9/11 coming up this week that we're recording this. A lot of horrendous memories that we all have from that, but also other kinds of memories as well. I know what I choose to remember. And yes, there was the horrific deaths, there was the destruction, there was the terrorism, there was the fear. But the things that I choose to remember is watching people help each other. And the way people came together and supported each other. And that's what I choose to remember from 9/11. That spark of light in the midst of all that darkness that came out of the human heart and how we all reached out to each other. And so I was chatting with Mary about something that she's got going on. And she found through her research that we're kind of hardwired to help each other. And it's almost automatic. And so, Dr. Mary Tyszkiewicz, I am so glad that you are on our show today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I kind of describe John as a brother from another mother, and by extension, so is Kevin. It is so nice to find these like-hearted people to work together. So yeah, I was on Capitol Hill during 9/11. It wasn't a shining moment of readiness. There was a lot of confusion. People didn't know what was going on, and I committed to myself right there and right then as I need to be part of this solution. We need to be ready for things like this. And so I brought my analysis skills to this. And one of the things I learned was it was very likely that one of the planes was coming to Capitol Hill where I happened to be. And, it did not come to Capitol Hill because the citizens and the pilots inside the plane, we now know from the black box, worked together in a situation they were not expecting to see or ever be a part of, and brought the plane down. So I have been studying small group rescues, groups of 16 or fewer, ever since that time, ever since 2011. And I uncovered, by looking at these rapid rescues, the heroic improv cycle, which is 5 steps. Alert.
We'll go into those.
Okay, the 5 steps of them. Yes.
Let's hold that thought for just a moment. Kevin, where were you on 9/11?
Well, you got to remember we are on the West Coast.
Yes.
So when 9/11 happened, it was like 9 o'clock in the morning there, but it was later here, or it was earlier here. And so we got up. It was going to be, that day was going to be my birthday all day long. It was going to be my birthday, and we turn on. We have a radio station that we listen to whenever we would get up, and it was 101.5. And they said, and one of the DJs said, I don't think I've ever said this before, but I think you should turn on the TV. And so we turned on the TV, and Tower 1 was smoking. And then I couldn't turn it off for the balance of the day, and watch the whole thing. And then I went outside, and we live in a hub for airlines. There was nothing. There was no activity. It was a really surreal day. We went to dinner, and people didn't, because obviously it was my birthday, and people weren't there. And the people that were there were talking in hushed tones, and it was sad because everyone could not believe what had happened that day, because it's one of those moments in history that like John Kennedy's assassination, like Pearl Harbor, and some of the major issues that happened at those times. It was crazy. It was not fun. And what were you doing, John?
I was in the Navy Reserve, and I just that week started my 2 weeks of active duty. And so I was actually on my way. I was on my commute to the Naval Media Center where I worked at Naval Base Anacostia, and heard on the radio that a plane struck the tower. And I'm like, how the heck did that happen? But I think, like most people who first heard about a plane striking, the World Trade Center, that they thought it was, a small private plane, some idiot, whatever. And so then I got to the base, and I pulled in to the parking space just as the second plane hit the second tower. And that's when we knew something was definitely up. Immediately, the base went into lockdown. There were all sorts of rumors about things going on downtown DC. There were bomb threats and all kinds of things going on. And I'm standing there in the parking lot talking to fellow shipmates who were also working at the Naval Media Center that day. And the Naval Media Center at Anacostia is not far from the Pentagon. And we heard the whoop. We heard the explosion when the plane struck. And we saw the smoke immediately coming up on the horizon. And the first thing we did was get into the building and up onto the roof so that we could try to see what was going on. And we were just as dumbfounded as everyone, but we knew, the fecal matter had hit the air circulation device, as we say. And so that's and then the base went on lockdown and communications were out and we couldn't call anyone and everybody was panicking, trying to reach loved ones. We all know what that tragedy was like. And it wasn't until the next day that I was able to actually get over to the Pentagon. And I spent the rest of my time on recall at the Pentagon in those recovery efforts. But yeah, it was quite devastating. And Mary, you were on Capitol Hill. Can you talk a little bit about what you were doing that day? And I know you said, it was not a great example of preparedness. So if you can kind of describe a little bit about, and you don't have to point fingers at anybody, but if you can describe a little bit about, what you were doing and what you witnessed going on around you during that time.
Yeah. So for people who were in the mid-Atlantic that day, it was a perfect fall day. Just like blue skies, candy, cotton candy, clouds, just like, great day to be alive, a great day for your birthday, Kevin. That's the kind of weather it was. You got the birthday, we got the gift. I mean, it was just a beautiful, beautiful day. And I had a reception to go to that evening. And for the first and only time in my life, because I never did it again, I wore heels to work. And so I tended to get up to the where I worked. I worked at the Library of Congress. I was a defense analyst. And even back then, we had televisions going all the time because we were helping the Congress respond to issues. Most of them come from the media. And same thing, the first plane goes in and in my mind, I'm like, oh, that poor person didn't know what they were doing. And then the second one happened. And my first clue that we were in trouble is that the expert on terrorism, he just gathered his stuff and left the building. Like, this was something that was predicted, that there was going to be some kind of terrorism event. It took me a while to kind of catch on. As John mentioned, it was really hard to communicate with people. I did get the police did not, it doesn't matter which jurisdiction we're talking about. The police didn't know what to do. We didn't really get any guidance. So they just evacuated us. And so then the streets were clogged. The metro was shut down, which I thought was odd. Where are these people supposed to go? So we're just standing outside in this beautiful weather. From my perspective, kind of like sitting ducks. All the police barricaded the buildings for reasons I didn't fully understand, which stopped traffic everywhere. So, and here I am in these heels. And now I have to walk.
I don't know about you, Kevin. Can you relate to having to stand outside in heels?
Well, the 12 double E stiletto heel I wear on Saturday night. Other than that, no.
Yeah, so it got to be, it was, I actually did get on a city bus, but it didn't go anywhere. The X-Files actually had an episode that kind of mimicked like what happened because people were talking about it on the bus. It was just a super, super duper odd day. So after sitting on the bus and not going anywhere for a half hour, I was like, okay, I guess I'm just going to walk. And I essentially walked home. I did go to my favorite restaurant because it was on my way home. And, people just had the radio on. The restaurateurs didn't even take any money. They were just like, I want to feed you. I want to take care of you. We're kind of going through this thing together. And, people in my life knew that sometimes I went to Capitol Hill. And so they were concerned for me. And then another woman in my life, she was actually in charge of the daycare at the Capitol. And at the Pentagon. And she told me the long story of taking care of those kids and getting those kids out of the Pentagon. And it's a much longer story, but because of traffic was so crazy that about 6 o'clock at night, they evacuated the kids via Coast Guard cutters. They just took them across the water. Yeah.
Oh,
That's how messed up all of that was.
You know, one of the things that, John, I don't know how you guys, and Mary, I don't know how you felt about it, but I didn't know when the next shoe was going to drop.
Yeah, that was it.
Because it was, you know, you had the tower, then you have the second one in the tower, then you had the Pentagon, and then you had this plane in Pennsylvania that nobody knew where it was.
Right.
And before it crashed, and we didn't know if there were more, if there was at what point it was going to be done, if there were going to be bombs, you know, or car bombs, or we had no idea
what it was. That's what shut everything down. There were bomb threats from or the suspicion of bomb threats, and that's why the buildings were closed and people were evacuated, and the metro was shut down because that would be a likely target.
Yeah.
But then, like you said, when the plane went down in Pennsylvania, we're like, well, what target was that? Maybe it was a hidden military base that we didn't know about. I don't know, but yeah, there was a lot of confusion of what was going on, and a lot of trepidation and worry about, you know, what was coming next. And I know that a friend of mine had recently retired from the Navy, and he was going to his new civilian job, and every morning his wife worked at the Pentagon, and she would go into work earlier than he did. So his thing at this point was he would be driving past the Pentagon as his commute time, and he would call her and tease her about having been already at work for an hour or so. And they would have, you know, their little morning chat. And he was on the phone with her when he saw the plane hit, and the plane hit her wing of the building. And it wasn't for many, many hours that he finally found out that she was, in fact, okay. But the horror of knowing that the plane hit right where she normally would have been, she happened to be down the hall. And but he just got, the cars stopped. Nobody was moving. So he left his car and climbed down off of the overpass to try to get to the Pentagon. And of course he couldn't get anywhere there. And it was many hours before he was able to connect with her. But yeah, just terrible times. But like we were talking about, people just started reaching out and helping each other. This restaurant, you know, said, I'm just going to feed you guys, you know, because all of a sudden nothing matters. Money doesn't matter. You know, little stuff no longer matters. All of a sudden we are one, and people were reaching out to help each other.
I wanted to mention one guy that I felt supremely sorry for. He was I think he was in government. I'm not sure, but he was at a school in Florida, and an elementary school, and he was reading to some of the students there, and one of his associates comes up and whispers in his ear. You could see the gears turning in his head as to, now of course I'm talking about the president of the United States. You could see the gears turning in his head. Oh Lord, what, they told me this was a possibility. Now it's here. What do I do? John, if you were sitting in that seat in the elementary school reading the book, and somebody said to you, there's been a bombing at the World Trade Center, and you were the president, what would you do?
I don't know. I have no idea. Obviously, there's stuff I've got to do to respond, but at the same time, we need to keep the children calm. We need to create that unity that I was talking about. So
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have done in that exact moment.
And I don't think he did either, but that's the humanality of it. None of us did.
Mary, what would you have done?
Well, I mean, I have an example. The woman who's my running coach, who's 83, she was at the Capitol and she was with kids. And, they just got focused on the kids. They, were keeping them happy and fed and calm. I mean, it was really unfortunate, but the kids whose parents died right then, the kids knew immediately. They just burst into tears and were unconsolable. So, at that moment, you have to be there for the more vulnerable among us. Right. So, and that's what they did. And, people who work with young children, they're very great problem solvers. And they looked at all kinds of different ways to reunite those kids and keep them safe and get them back. And I just love the idea that it eventually was a Coast Guard cutter. It's just like trains, planes, automobiles, like we got, and a boat,
and boats.
We can make this work. We can make this work. But yeah, I think that's part of it. It is, take care of yourself and take care of the people who need the help. It kind of gets back to the beginning of the conversation.
Exactly where I wanted to take us, because this is Positive Talk Radio, and in the midst of all of this darkness and negativity and horror that was going on, and sadness and loss and grief, there was this ray of light of people reaching out and helping each other. And so yeah, take us back to what you have learned in your studies about how people. Oh, go ahead, Kevin.
We need to take a quick break.
Oh, right.
Yes. When we come back, we're going to talk about that, because there also was a story that came out later about a blind man and his guide dog who let a bunch of people down from the 73rd story of the first tower just before it went down. We'll be right back. You're listening to Positive Talk. John Varico and Mary
Tyszkiewicz.
We'll be right back.
You're listening to Positive Talk Radio. We're going to take a short break to tell you audio and music creators about our commercial affiliate, Lyric Vids, specializing in creating amazing and engaging lyric videos. Are you looking to promote your videos in the most engaging way, but you don't have an animator and an editor? Whether you're an artist, musician, or business with a message to share, our lyric videos are designed to hook viewers and amplify your reach. Go to positivetalkradio.net/lyric vids. That's positivetalkradio.net/LYRICVIDS now to get started. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. We hope you enjoyed learning about our affiliate Lyric Vids, who specialize in creating captivating animated lyric videos. Now let's get back to the show.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. I know it's a loud song. It takes a moment to get going, but John Varico is with us, and Mary
Tyszkiewicz.
Thank you. Is with us, and she has spent the last 20 years, probably 23, 24 years, working to come up with a system and to understand and to help people get through some of the darkest times that we have in life, so that they can come out the other side and do better and to work with each other, which is I know the goal that you have. And John, you've worked with her for a long time. This has been really paramount to what she's about, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Mary, you started this project, and Kevin, I know you've got some background in this as well, but Mary, tell us about improv and how and what you learned and how you've applied that to your program, Heroic Improv.
Yes. So I am Dr. Mary Tyszkiewicz. I've gone to school forever, which is why I get to be called a doctor. My mother's an actor. I didn't want to be anything like my mother. so I'm going to be a scientist. I started my research career as a chemist. And, but fast forward to 9/11, again, I was an analyst. I was helping do evaluation for the Congress. And I said, you know, I'm going to bring my analysis skills to helping in a 9/11 like situation. You know, how can all of us not, because the first responders, as far as I could tell, were not prepared, but all of us be ready for something like this. And so I looked, so for 10 years, I did research on what's a better way to have people prepare to be ready for accidents, natural disasters, on purpose violence. And I looked at modeling and simulation. I looked at virtual reality. So for 10 years, I was looking at all these options. And at the same time, my mom was recently retired and got back on the community theater stage. And when I saw her be in My Fair Lady, which is a pretty high-end musical theater thing, and they work, you know, there's very few people who are professionals and everybody else is an amateur. And in 2 months, they go from nothing to a staged production on beat. And I was looking for, you know, how do we get communities prepared? And I was like, boom, community theater, it's all right there. You know, you have a few people who know what's going on, and they bring the other people along who have the desire. And I was like, the solutions theater for this preparedness, readiness thing. So once I figured that out, I was like, oh no, I got it. So I studied theater improv for a whole year, actually for 2 years, but the first year was very intense because I'm not my mother. I'm not the actor. And, but I was like, I was so motivated. I wanted to, like, you know, do something different. And, so when you take an improv class, you do a performance in front of 100 friendly people. And when I stepped out on that stage, and I pretended to be a dog in my improv exercise, and we do improv as teams. So I was with 8 other people, and I felt fearless. My adrenaline was running, and I felt fearless because these people behind me got my back. And it didn't really matter whether anybody laughed, whether we did a good performance, is we were going to go through this together. And my friends, colleagues, teammates are now, we're going to make it work together. And once I had that experience of adrenaline and going into action, I was like, this is what we need for readiness training. This is what we need. And I just went forward from there.
And it's amazing how you were able to see that improv exercises can help people be prepared for something they're not prepared for something that just pops up, like, unfortunately, a disaster. Now, maybe not as huge as 9/11. It could be something as simple as an automobile accident, or it could be something as horrific as an active shooter event. Could be any kind of a thing. But, you know, you're going through your beautiful fall day with your cotton candy clouds, and then something happens. But because of your relationship with improv exercises, you've been able to find those little triggers that can help people become responsive. This, yes, I think, is amazing, which is why I said you got to be on the show. We got to talk about the Heroic Improv Project.
Well, and I just want to mention this because I believe, and I've said this many times on the show, I'm a former actor. I was actually a Petruchio. I did a thing called Dark at the Top of the Stairs. I did Shakespeare. I was Lazar Wolf the Butcher in Fiddler on the Roof.
That's my
and
goal.
I did a lot of improv. Improvisational acting is the cornerstone to you learning how to use your brain and how to listen to people intently to come up with a scenario that works for everybody, and you can continue to move through it. And it's just like what Mary is saying. That is a perfect metaphor for working together in the middle of crisis.
And giving you
Because-
confidence.
Yes, it gives everybody the confidence that they can. So when we need to take our station break, but when we come back, Mary, I'd like for you to give us some scenarios and stuff and how this works in a real life practical situation. So if I don't know, you're at your home having a party on a Saturday night, and you want to play a game or something, you can do an improv thing with your family and friends that could end up being good for you, or maybe. I don't know. Anyway, John Barrico's with us, and Mary
Tyszkiewicz.
and we will be right back. It's just a minute and 10 seconds. Don't go away.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald and friends. John Barrico is with us, and Mary Tyszkiewicz thing is with us. And in any event, Johnny, having a good time?
Oh, well, I'm having a wonderful time because I get to hang out with you and my friend Mary.
And we get to hang out with you, which is no small feat in and of itself because you're such a busy guy.
I try to be. It's all good, though.
Exactly. So, Mary, you came up with this program and it involved theater and acting and improvisational theater. How did you put it into practice?
Yeah. So what I did was I did an intensive study of improv performance. So anybody who loves theater, sometimes you see really, really great performances, and sometimes you don't see great performances. And so one of the things I learned was when you got skilled actors together, how did they successfully create a performance? And I noticed that they use these 5 steps: alert, ready, connect, focus, move. So the first step's alert. In an improv performance, you have to establish where you are, and related to disaster, that this is a serious thing that you need to go into action about. Number 2 is ready. You look around you to see what's available to help, including other people. So you can see improv actors, they'll say, well, here's a kitchen, and they ask another player to come in, to be their partner. So that's ready. And then connect is the third step. This is when you create a team. And so the improv actors, they rehearse together. They are already a team. And when they're in performance, they agree on where they are. And then the fourth step is focus. And one of the players knows what the next right step is. So they signal it, and then everybody goes to the 5th step, which is move, and then everyone goes into action together. And then in an improv performance, and also it turns out this describes rapid rescues, you just repeat this 5-step cycle over and over again in performance until it's over, but in a rapid rescue until the person is rescued.
This whole thing was so fascinating to me when you had showed me a video of a crash where a motorcyclist had gotten trapped under a vehicle, under a car, and people came to the rescue. They looked around for things that would help them, as tools as well as other individuals, and then they quickly started to kind of form a team and figure out who was going to do what. Like a small person got and looked underneath the vehicle to make sure that there was room and the person was still alive, and which way they might have to move. And some of the bigger folks came and started to lift the car, and then more people came and joined the team, and ultimately they were able to do this. But this all happened in less than a minute. She's talking about 5 steps, and it sounds like, oh, it's a long process before you start action. This was amazingly fast, and it just took a matter of seconds before people started to take some sort of action to rescue this individual. And this kind of stuff, what amazed me even more was not only does it happen, it happens naturally. So yeah, could describe, if you can, for us that whole amazing process of what's going on in people's brains that make them behave this way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the reasons we're here on Positive Talk Radio, right? Is to have everybody feel like if you have the desire to help, you can help. So I love that people are bringing back who's our friend with the sweater?
Mr. Rogers?
Mr. Rogers. Always look for the helpers. So one of the things I have found out in my study of rapid rescues is when the call goes out for help, many people will go towards it. They will go towards the person who needs help. And what I've learned about rapid rescues is when you go towards that person in need, you don't need to go alone. You actually attract other people who can help you respond to this life-threatening situation. It happens all the time, every day. There was recently a shooting in Georgia, and I'm confident that people there, for the 9 people who went to the hospital, those people were helped using the 5 steps of the heroic improv cycle. Is that they saw somebody was bleeding, they needed help, and they improvised how to help this person until that person's life was saved. And so this happens all the time. It's just really underreported, which is one reason I'm glad I'm Positive Talk Radio, because this story needs to get out more. You don't need to be a hero by yourself. We just need, the other thing that rapid rescue research tells me is somebody needs to start the action. If nobody starts the action, nothing happens. But if one person starts the action, other people will join. And it's amazing, the creativity when life is on the line, how everyone is laser focused on that result. The other thing I learned that's kind of interesting is in all these rapid rescues, the first attempt at rescue fails, but because a life is on the line, they learn very quickly and go through this cycle again until this person is rescued. And it's super inspiring.
I have a story about that. I think, Mary, I think I told you this prior to us going on the air the last time we talked. But I used to do the show on KKNW in Seattle, and I would drive I-90, which goes from Seattle all the way to like Boston, I think, I-90 on the way home. And it was going into Memorial Weekend, I believe. And I could go over a hill, and I see this cloud of dust in front of me. And it is a black SUV with a trailer. And the trailer had whipped around. She had lost it. The trailer had whipped around and was now in front of her. And she ended up on her side, and there was a big cloud of dust. And so the SUV was on its left side. And so I stopped. I was the first one there. I was virtually right behind her, and got out of my car, and she and 2 kids, a dog and a baby, were in the car. And they were all screaming, and she was screaming. Nobody could get out. An SUV door, I don't know if you've ever tried to lift one up when it's supposed to go out, but you lift it. Those things are heavy. and she had no prayer of getting out. So I helped her with the door a little bit, and then I looked around and there was a guy next to me, and he was working in conjunction with what I was doing. I had picked the job. I was going to hold the door up. He was going to reach inside and see if he couldn't grab a kid. And then somebody else showed up. And so suddenly there were cars and there were people everywhere, and they were assigning themselves jobs of, this is what we're going to do. This is how I'm going to be a member of the team to get it done. And then the engine was catching on fire, and I could hear the crackling of the smoke, and it was hot. And a guy in a 18-wheeler had pulled up, and he'd stopped, and he got out of his truck, and he said, "Do you guys need anything?" And we said, "We need a fire extinguisher." So he went, got a fire extinguisher, and put out the fire. All of this happened before the aid car and all those other guys got there. Now, so we were getting the people out of the car, and by the time the aid people got there, everybody was out of the car. Everybody was okay. Nobody was hurt severely. And then the aid people got there, and all these good Samaritans just faded away. They were done. We've done our good job. We can leave it in the hands of the professionals. And we didn't say hello to each other. We didn't give each other high fives. None of that was necessary. So it was like, that to me was being a human.
That's a thing of beauty right there. It really is. So Mary, tell me about what you've learned about improv. How do you now put this into a training program that help people to become that first person to take the step? Because we all know everybody reacts to a critical situation or a disaster in different ways. You've got the fighters and flighters and freezers, and then there's also fawning. And so everybody reacts a little bit differently. How can folks help each other through this to actually take action? And then how does your training program help them to overcome whatever their tendency might be?
Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much for your story. I mean, when I do my heroic improv workshop, which is 3 hours of 5 sets of curated games, we can do it face-to-face or virtually. Many people, once I tell them about the 5 steps, they'll remember a story like the story you told. And I hope the listeners today can think about a moment where maybe they did this and really didn't think too much about it, but to give themselves confidence that if something very serious happens, an accident, disaster, or on-purpose terrorism, that you can help and you don't need to do it alone. And with the main point of my training is to help people feel confident they can do it. So obviously Kevin never heard of the heroic improv cycle, never heard of the 5 steps, neither did any of those helpers, but they were able to do it. And so what the training does is just help people feel confident that they could do this. So in the fight, flight, and freezer, I told you my mom's the actor. I'm a freezer. I'm not a person who goes into action. So naturally. So the training that I created was for me too, to give me confidence into moving into action. And the other thing that was missing from disaster readiness training in general was to make it feel real, to make it feel like your adrenaline is running. Most of the other training is very kind of like, boring. Even with the virtual reality, sometimes it doesn't feel real. So,
go ahead. So how does that differ from people getting first aid training and CPR training? What's different about what your technique does?
Yeah. So anything that is related to a drill is a skill. So first aid skills, fire drills, tornado drills, these are all ways you're figuring out what action you want to do when you do it. One of the things we're missing in disaster readiness is practice. There's a practice gap between having the skills and being able to use your skills in when your adrenaline is running. And so what the improv exercises do, they reliably generate adrenaline. Because in my training, people aren't expecting to perform. So when you, and John knows this because he's a speech coach, the number one fear of people is public speaking. Well, guess what? We use that fear in heroic improv to get people adrenaline running. Is like, oh yeah, you need to perform right here, right now. And so they get the idea and feeling in their body of going into action as their adrenaline is running. And it doesn't matter if you're a fight person, a flight person, or a freeze person. Going into action when your adrenaline is running is what the reps you want to get, the practice you want to get. And that's what gives you the confidence that if there's an accident on the side of the road, or, you know, a flood's coming up quickly, or there's a riptide, or there's a active shooter situation, you know, you could keep yourself safe and the people around you without panic. You know, use that adrenaline into positive action.
You know, I love the concept of having your adrenaline running, because as you know, when you're in an improvisational situation. Now, for those of you that really are not clear on what that is, let me explain it. You're with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 other people. They give you in general a really in general skit to run, or a place to be. You're going to be in an office building, or you're going to be at a grocery store, or whatever it is. And then they say go. And you have no idea what you're going to say. You have no idea what the other guy is going to say. And when the other guy says something and you have to respond, that heightens the adrenaline and heightens the stress. And it makes you hyper aware, because you got to come up with something. You can't just sit there and go,
I don't know.
You gotta. It's like when I was in high school, we had an improvisational class, and they put a chair in a room, in the middle of the room, and somebody would sit on the chair. Well, my best friend sat on the chair, and I created the scenario that he was now sitting on the toilet. And so now he had to, from sitting on the toilet, had to have a conversation with me on the other side of the door about what he was doing and what we're doing. And so it was funny, but it was also it was one of those things that caused him a little bit more stress than me, by the way. But I mean, but Mary, that's really is beautiful how you make that work.
Yeah. And I actually was really thinking, you know, back to 9/11, when I was standing in my high heels, which I always have a pair of running shoes with me now everywhere. There's a pair in the car right now. I'm always prepared to be able to run anywhere. But I really thought of it for people like me, people who are freezers, people who need to think a lot, people who don't naturally go towards bullets and fire. But then I had the great good privilege of doing some theater improv exercises with Navy SEALs. Ooh. And because, so one of the things everybody knows about Navy SEALs is they're trained for everything. But the one thing they weren't trained for was to go into performance without any notice. So, Kevin, you asked me for a game. It's called Eagle Bear. And this is the game that challenged our Navy SEAL friends. I had them. So for people who know improv, it's a warm-up game. So one of the things, just like athletes, improv actors have to warm up. So it's one of the very first exercises you do. They're all really fun. You can do them with kids. You can do them with adults. It's a great icebreaker. So
you're gonna have to do some exercises now.
Yeah. So for Eagle, and if you guys want to join in, you make your arms move like wings, and then you make an eagle sound. And then you do bear. So now your wings become claws, and now you make a bear sound. Okay, so we're going to put it together. And so it's a listening game. Listening's really important in disasters. You probably remember this, Kevin. It was very noisy, in that scenario you told us about. So I'm going to pair an emotion with the eagle or the bear, and you switch when you hear the emotion. So kind of like happy eagle, sad bear. Okay. So we'll just do a couple. Curious eagle. Shy bear. Hungry eagle. Happy bear. So that's we finished.
Kevin, I bet you never thought you'd be doing this on your radio.
Yeah, but this is the game that challenged the Navy SEALs. You could just see the thought bubbles coming out of their head. Like, I don't know what sound an eagle makes.
Exactly.
They were so like awkward, and
the thing about a Navy SEAL is, John knows this. They are great human beings, but they do not like being in a situation that they are unprepared for.
Yep.
Is that right, John?
That's exactly it.
And so this is a great exercise.
I don't think anybody likes to be in a situation they're unprepared for.
That's so true. That's
and when I had that reaction from them, I was like, oh, this is good for everybody. This isn't just for the ordinary people. This is for first responders. This is for officials. This is because it gives you the experience of being confronted with something no notice. You're not expecting it. And your adrenaline runs, but it's low stakes. Like, you're not really going to hurt. You're not going to hurt yourself or anybody around you. Right. So you get the experience of a high stakes event, but it's a low stakes practice. And they hated that game. But the other games that I did with them, they were just like, you know what, Mary, you're exactly right. The improv exercises, they generate the noise and confusion of a disaster. They get across the point that in a disaster, communication is really important. And sometimes it's nonverbal, which Kevin, as you know, in improv, a lot of the communication on the stage is nonverbal.
90% of what you do on stage is not about the words you say. It's the actions that you are participating in. As an example, when you're doing the bear, to act like a bear so that people can see, oh, that's a bear, not just but you know what I mean? So a lot of it is nonverbal.
Yeah. And these are, if you've ever taken an improv game, these are, the alert games are all warm-up games, and none of this stuff is really, it's not rocket science. However, it's so powerful. And because I'm
a scientific analyst.
Well, but I will tell you, Mary, that is a skill that if you can learn it, and it is a learnable skill, you can translate that into anything that you do in life.
Yeah.
Mary, would you tell us about how you actually implement this? I know you've worked with Navy SEALs. I know you work with school groups. Tell us a little bit more about how you actually implement your program and how people can learn more about your program before we run out of time. Because
yeah. Oh my gosh, it's been so fun. So I have a website, www.heroic-improv.com. And so that has information on my program. And the way I work is I set up with a school, a client, an organization, a corporation, ask them what scenario keeps you up at night. And what we do is in a 3-hour workshop, we'll do a simulation of a disaster in the beginning and at the end. Those are customized to what the group is. So a classic would be do a tornado to begin with, and then do a chemical cloud at the end. And then we do these 5 sets of curated improv games. And at the end of the workshop, we do the harder scenario. And I, as a researcher, can tell that the group can use their abilities, their improv abilities, to find solutions together without panic at the end. And because I'm a researcher, I ask, how prepared do you feel before you take the workshop, and how prepared do you feel after? And it shows very powerfully that everyone feels more prepared afterwards. And again, people will naturally go help people when somebody starts the action. This just helps all of us, including freezers like me, feel more confident that they could start the action. And if more of us can start the action, there'll be a lot of helpers around to help each other.
Mary, I want to thank you for being here. And your website again is?
www.heroic-improv.com.
Very nice. And John, I want to thank you for being here. This was fun. Did you have a good time?
I always have a good time, especially when I get to hang out with you, Kevin, and when I get to help to bring some light to programs like Mary's. Mary, you have taken your program around the world. You've been to the Philippines with it. You've done a lot of things, and I really want to see more people learn about this program, learn about this opportunity, and take advantage of it. And the fact that I'm able to help you do that here on Positive Talk Radio, I think that tickles my fancy.
Yeah, and I am so grateful for the both of you and Positive Talk Radio, because, during 9/11, it is a somber time, no doubt about it. But by telling these stories, by reminding each other about how we can help one another in these moments, I think that's a really positive thing to think about during this week. And thank you so much for letting me be part of that solution.
Well, without people like you, it don't get done. So it really is important. And if you are out there and you have the ability and you see something happen in front of you, don't hesitate. Go take action. Because the life you save, as an example, on 5th and Pike, I was driving my bus and I was in the bus zone, and there was a blind lady with a white cane trying to walk across the street. This is one of the busiest intersections in Seattle. And she started walking and she started veering off to the right, which is in the middle of the intersection. And there were 4 lanes of traffic in all directions. And so I jumped out of the bus and helped her off to the side. One other person helped me. And he was not from this country. And he was from someplace else. And the two of us guided her to the side of the road. When something like that happens, don't hesitate. You can save a life.
You just brought out a very, very critical point. And you said this person was not from this country. He had no vested interest in what was going on here necessarily.
Nope.
But during times like this, we forget about our differences. It doesn't matter about the color of our skin, the church we go to, the politicians we follow, whatever differences we might have goes away, because now all of a sudden we are all together in a common cause to help someone else in crisis. And that's going back to how I started this whole thing. That's what I remember about 9/11. And that's what I love about what real human beings are about. And it's about helping each other.
That's all there is. And Gowdy says, thank you, Gowdy. Great episode. He says, John, you're the reason why I want to have you hang out with me more. And Mary, you're welcome back anytime. We got more to talk about working together as a team so that we can all live our lives a little bit better, especially during the times of crisis.
Yeah.
So, heroic-improv.com.
Exactly. Gowdy, before we go, says he had a recent accident where he was able to help someone, and it's interesting. The basic survival skills kick in. I think it's a universal thing if you allow it to be, and but sometimes you need training, and that's why you go see Mary. Mary, your website again is
www.heroic-improv.com.
See, and I can't say her last name, but I could say that. So thank you both. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin at kmmedia.pro.